You're listening to Dirty Feet, a podcast from No More Radio.
Vous écoutez le podcast Dirty Feet sur les ondes de No More Radio.
Hosted by,
animé par
Allison Burns,
JD Papillon
et Stéphanie Morin-Robert.
Stay tuned.
We're gonna move you.
This week on the Dirty Feet podcast, we're going a little outside of our norm of covering dance here in Montreal. We're going to be talking about a puppet show. This is something that I saw in 2013 at the Montreal Fringe Festival, and I fell in love with it. And they were actually so kind as to put a quote from me up on their website. So here's a nice little, circling back and wrapping it up and actually getting to speak with these artists is an absolute pleasure, and to talk about the show that I enjoyed so much. And even at the time, I was considering that there is so much movement. It's without language, this show, without known language, that it does almost fall into this realm where we can kind of discuss it in terms of the physicality and the otherworldliness of it that is maybe not quite your standard theater show. So anyway, it's called We Walk Among You, and it's by the Artichoke Heart Collective. And since presenting this show, they actually have another work up and running called Circular, which I actually saw in Toronto this past Fringe Festival. So you guys are rocking the fringes. You're presenting the work now at Mainline Theatre for a 2-week run. You've been brought here by Beyond the Mountain Productions, which works to bring theatre to Montreal from elsewhere and from Montreal to other cities. So let's introduce who we have in the room today. Of course, we have co-host Stephanie Morin-Robert along with me. We also have director Tijiki Morris, as well as two of the puppeteers, Andrew Young and Talia DelCogliano, and one of the fight directors and Foley artist, Alexandra Barbarena. So these four wonderful artists are in studio today with us, and I would love to have them pipe in so we can hear their voices. Let's just go around to my right and start with Alex.
Hi there, I'm Alexandra.
I'm Talia.
I'm Tijiki.
And I'm Andrew.
Super. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's start with the origins of the Artichoke Heart Collective. You were founded in 2010, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, in 2010. We started with something completely unpuppetry related, but we were super drawn to puppetry in our second year of theater school. And the summer between our second and third year, we started doing some shadow puppetry, and then it just evolved into a full-blown puppetry company.
And were all four of you involved since the beginning?
No, actually. Myself, Talia, Tijiki, and Michelle Urbano are part of the original production from our third year. Alex was in our class, but came on board later. Mm-hmm. And Andrew, who was a year above us, came aboard a little later on in the process as well.
Yep.
To put everyone into context, where did you guys study? What school did you guys all meet at? And where did that kind of all initiate?
We studied at Humber College in Toronto, and that's kind of where it happened, pretty much. That's where the magic happened.
Are there classes in particular that really kind of got that need or that want to start your own company and to start things up, or teachers in particular?
The whole program is based off of self-producing, pretty much, like just creating your own works. So we were seasoned from the very beginning, I guess, right? I guess.
Yeah,
is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. It's the program itself is kind of derived more towards not waiting for your agent to call you. It's about creating your own content and finding what's interesting to you and figuring out how to tell your own story, and then giving you the tools that you can try and do that without going completely broke.
We also had a number of physical theater classes in which we did a lot of physical devised work. So, I mean, I think for me, and even the way we do puppetry, that's really where we kind of were seasoned or marinated in that kind of work.
And in our second year, we actually had a puppetry course, which is kind of where this stemmed from. Mm-hmm. Paul DeYoung, who was our teacher for that, planted the seed, I imagine. And then from there, we just couldn't stop.
So not only creating new work, but also creating opportunities for yourself and for possibly others, since there are people who kind of join into this collective and participate in different ways. As far as the puppets that you guys do use, where does that all start? How do these puppets come to life? Because most of this production is about these puppets coming to life, which is quite impressive and really beautiful. I know I was talking to Andrew actually about, him walking home and collecting junk off the road and like that kind of being the start of puppets that he makes for this production in particular, who gave life to these puppets?
A lot of our puppets we do found object puppetry.
Turn them into puppets.
We turn them into puppets. So Tidge, who is the master collector of things, she has an extensive collection of things that she finds, or things that also Andrew mentioned earlier, we pick up off the street. We love garbage picking because that's where all the cool things are on the street. Toronto is so great for that. We see an object that we like, and then we kind of build from there. We start with
this particular one. We sat in a room with a bunch of things. With
a bunch of garbage. And other things that we do is we start with newspaper and tape, and we'll build things, different shapes, and then we'll see what speaks to us, what their actions are once they are half built. And then we do prototypes from there. But some puppets that are in this show were the original thing from that day in that room. For instance, Greenie Doctor was a piece of fabric that Michelle found and fell in love with. It was just a green furry thing. And she's like, I love this. I want to use it. And so we haven't been able to remake him yet.
And then we built the sort of interactions. We build a lot off of improvisation. And having the characters improvise together. And that gave us our place.
Mm-hmm. And then oftentimes after we build them, they tell us what they need. Mm-hmm. We don't go into this with an idea of, I want to build a one-eyed, crawly around little puppet thing. It just ends up being, he doesn't have arms, he's only got one eye, he can't speak, and his feet are now his voice because he has no other way to move.
Mm-hmm. You use this word embodied puppetry, and I'm wondering if that makes it different than other puppetry, or what does that word mean in the Artichoke Heart Collective?
I think for me, embodied puppetry refers to the physicality that is given by the performers. And it's interesting, we've had this kind of on-off debate about whether we would completely mask the puppeteers. In some forms of puppetry, they do that. However, I don't know, I feel that to see the performers, to see their physicality along with the puppets gives a fullness to the puppets, and it gives the puppets a kind of life that is very rich and full and embodied. And there's this really interesting relationship, I think, that I like to explore between the puppeteer and the puppet that is very, that I don't know, it's really alive, and I guess that's why we think embodied puppetry describes the way that we do puppets.
I think a really interesting thing when watching a puppet show or when experiencing your show just the other night was kind of having you guys as the puppeteers disappear as the show went on, where you no longer realize that there are people, because the only people on stage are the puppets who've come to life at that point. Is this intentional? Is this the goal when manipulating puppets?
Yes, because, I think so anyways, because it's so much of the story is created through these characters that we're developing, and although these characters need 2 or 3 different people to let them walk through the space or develop something, it's all about these characters and their choices. So although we are there and present and helping them move, we are not the focus of what's happening, and we're not the focus of the interaction between these characters. It's all about the puppets and the choices that they make and seeing them go through that action. And the more it's just kind of within a scene and figuring out which point of focus is happening throughout the scene and who the audience is supposed to be looking at. And the more that we work on that and find our own stories within that, we disappear and the other people disappear, and the entire world, although it is present, it disappears too, and it's just about these little movements and these choices that these characters have.
Yeah, and there's something also kind of magical about the fact that even when you're on stage behind them, me as a puppeteer, I'm giving all of my focus into this thing. And even if the audience members do start looking at you, they see what you're looking at and they're like, oh, well, I should just look at what they're looking at. And, we try to, we work on some neutrality in our face, although we do let the life shine up into it sometimes, if your character is having a field day with a ball or something. And you can't help but not be excited. But as a puppeteer behind it, I find myself just sinking into them anyway. I'm sinking into the puppet. It's almost like a thing falls over my eyes, like I'm not even there anymore. And then I kind of feel like I disappear, and then that's it. It's just my hands, Yeah,
I think it's beautifully immersive, I find, this type of work. And just kind of being on the outside of it. I didn't really, operate a lot of the puppets, but just kind of, watching it and seeing people's reactions and stuff like that. It's great. And just hearing people talk about it, because my friends, you're saying you're fully, I guess, sort of embodied. Sometimes they would look for clues in the puppeteers to see, what's going on? Because, they're so willing to go there. People are so willing, and especially, once you have puppets on stage, they're willing to suspend their disbelief, sort of like a cartoon in this. I guess that's sort of a close comparison. It's really cool. It's really, really cool listening to that.
That is something that grabbed me the first time I saw it, is that you have created this universe that has its own rules, and you really you accept the rules of the universe as an audience member and just let it blow you away.
Totally. Yeah. Just say that into the microphone. Everyone needs to know.
In terms of the vocalization of the characters, is this coming out of as you're improvising with the puppets? Are you exploring different sounds that maybe they would make? Because like we mentioned, there's no dialogue, but you do hear noises from different characters.
Initially, when we do improvisation, and with this piece, we really explore voice, and some of them end up without voices, but they end up with expression. It definitely comes out of initially the exploration with the improvisation and exploring of character. But then as we find things are needed, sometimes we do this exercise where people talk through their, what their intentions are or what they are saying in their gibberish. But, it definitely initiates with exploration, I would say.
Mm-hmm. And then we end up saying it. We'll say, our dialogue, and then Tidge will tell us to, okay, mask that, and then mask that more until eventually you're like, or something, or just, an expressive sound that comes out. Betty, Nurse Betty is a prime example of a very vocal, very expressive person. And anybody in the audience can look at her and put whatever dialogue they want onto her. And that's the art. I love that part about what we do, because some people were like, oh, I feel like this is what they're saying. And you're thinking sometimes they're bang on. And you're thinking, that's exactly what I'm saying. And other people are just like, this was the story that I got. This character was talking about this. And it's just great. It gives them the opportunity to let their imagination soar with dialogue.
That's kind of the magic of movement, and from a dance perspective, or a movement perspective.
Exactly.
This possibility of it meaning anything to that person, depending on their relationship with the characters or their intentions while watching.
That is totally what we want, is that a person can see what we've put out there and take their own meaning from it. And that I get really excited when someone will come and have a completely different experience than the one that I thought we were putting forward, or get a completely different story or whatever. And that's always really exciting, that it's really open for people to interpret in the way that they want.
Alex, as one of the fight directors, Do you do that kind of role for other productions that are more typical kind of straight up theater? And how do you make that work for puppets?
Yes, I do. I do fight direction in different contexts. Mostly with humans. This is the first time I've done a puppet show.
With humans.
Yeah, and so doing that, because I'd seen the show before. I got asked before there was even a fight in the story, which was like kind of cool. So there's this idea of how the puppets already moved, and it was a lot of fun putting it together because David, the other fight director, and he's a puppeteer. He also does Greenie Doctor, and we went to a studio with our other teammate. We were pretty much moving like the puppets, and we had to like kind of account for the puppeteers' bodies as well. So, I mean, there's like a little video of us moving like Claudia and moving like Greenie Doctor, and it's like really ridiculous. We're like, they're like just sort of figuring out the mechanics and like how like it translates from a human body to a puppet body. So it was a lot of moving very, very slowly. And the thing is, also with fighting and with puppetry, is that it has to be so specific. And I think that's with any movement, really. It has to be like super specific in order, because you're not talking or anything. You have to tell the story completely through your body, right? So, and then translating that, I mean, things, once we had 6 bodies, really, 4 humans and 2 puppets, moving together, like, there are things that had to be sort of like changed and stuff, and that was something that we did take into account, and we left it really open for that, and just to kind of leave room and for safety's sake and stuff, because puppeteers are having elbows in each other's faces, and we're like, okay, let's not do that anymore, you know what I mean? So it was a lot of tweaking. It was really tedious work. It was probably the most tedious fight I've ever had to put together, and maybe the most tedious fight I may ever have to put together. And it was the most wonderful experience. Like, I mean, because doing that really helped me with the rest of my work, like. Because there was a lot that I learned through, I guess, the first time that we did it back for Fringe 2013. And that, I was like, oh my God. And things just started clicking for me as an artist, as a performer in all respects, like acting, musician, fight director, fighter. Yeah, it was really, really cool. Yeah, just finding those moments. Sounds cool.
It was also a really great challenge that she had to figure out how to keep the puppets in front the entire time, because in, stunting and things, a lot of the hits get blocked when someone turns their back towards the audience or towards the camera or what have you, and we can't do that because we're not allowed to cover up the puppets as the humans, right? So we have to contort ourselves to keep the puppets facing the audience the entire time. So, David and I are doing this weird dance to keep the puppets forward, but to make it seem realistic when we're punching Claudia in the face, So
it was really tedious. It was really tedious, yeah. And it was really cool just, like, figuring out, like, because when I would get behind a puppet, let's say, just for sort of workshopping, I guess, for lack of a better word, like, just like, okay, can this work? And it's just like, my body is so much different from Michelle's body or from Talia's body or from Aisha's body. And I'm just like, okay, so I can do it this way, but now they have to try it. And then I have to like kind of like rework it and stuff like that. It was, I don't know. It's fun. I love it.
Have you ever referred to yourself as a choreographer? Because to me, that sounds straight on.
It is,
what you're doing, It is an interesting parallel to...
Totally. It is choreography, yeah. But I like to, the only reason I like to stay away from that word a little bit, like not always, like it's just because when it becomes choreography, at least with fighting, is that people tend to go into sort of automatic pilot mode when it becomes choreography, and then they're not thinking, and then and when people aren't thinking, that's when people get hurt. And that's the only reason. But it is like this choreography, and then from the choreography, like it's just sort of, it's total vernacular. Like it's the same thing, but it's just like when I'm working, that's yeah. It's just to keep people from going on autopilot, and to keep people from being general with their work, I guess. Because like when I start using the word choreography, people start losing the specificity and stuff like that. When they stop thinking. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's weird. Like just something doesn't click. I don't know, like in people's heads when that happens.
When preparing to do a show like this, since it's so physical for you guys manipulating the puppets, what is the preparation going into it? Because you spoke of like twisting your body and always keeping the puppets forward, and I mean I feel like that. Are you sore? Like, how are you?
So sore.
Okay?
So sore. This is not even funny. The amount of warming up that we need to do before a show. You know, you'll see, you walk into the theater, everyone's laying on their back, twisting and warming up their spines, a lot of wrist warm-ups, because, Andrew, for instance, he crawls the whole show. He's on his hands.
I'm basically on my hands and knees for the entire show. So that's a challenge when you're doing that for 5 shows a week and 2 days on Saturday and
on concrete.
Yeah.
You love me so much.
Yeah, the best.
The knee pads are wearing thin.
I've actually gone through a pair of pants and a pair of socks and a pair of dance shoes just crawling. Like there's holes building up in the knees and the feet because they've just worn away from rehearsals or doing the run. And yeah.
Go ahead.
I think though we definitely start, and I mean this particular process we didn't have as much time to do as much as I would have liked, but when we start a rehearsal process or a creation process, we really like to start with physicality, and we from our schooling we did a lot of Grotowski based physical work, so we have this training regiment that we do. And I also try to do exercises based on things such as viewpoints and even some like Buto type work. So that's kind of where we start physically, and we start in that place so that we have all those elements there, and that's kind of how we prepare beforehand, not just immediately.
Yeah, and it's really great too because while we're doing the training, Tej will drop in ideas of your character, a storyline that you can use when you're in the training. We work heavily with silent feet because when you have all these puppets running around that don't have legs, and you can't be clunking around, and it's very physically demanding work. When people think puppets, they just think, sock puppets. But you don't think that, at least for my character, my arms are up at 90 degree, for over an hour. And my shoulders are, like, my muscles are huge now because of this.
You can't see her, but she's really ripped.
Thanks.
For those listening.
But yeah, so I mean, everybody has their own physically demanding part of their puppet that they play, or they do both. Anne, who is a dino fly species, she flies above hand, so there are 3 or 4 of us that manipulate her, and she's up, and her arms are straight up in the air for however long she's flying. So, we have Tej is the greatest because our puppets, always have lovely, complex movements, and we rise to the challenge of taking these on 100%.
And they do a great job.
Something I just want to, if you don't mind me commenting on what you just said. Okay, cool. Something so cool, though, about, that training and stuff is that, and why I sort of love this work, and I love Barbara, and I love Grotowski and stuff, is that, you train like that, and it forces or encourages the performer to be engaged, even having the silent feet, because to have silent feet, you have to be, engaged, and just them being physically engaged engages you in the story. It just,
Good point.
Yeah, it's just because it's sort of like watching an animal, right? They're so compelling because they're just always engaged, and they're always in this sort of, that fight or flight mode. And when performers are like that, I find that really interesting. That's just my personal opinion. I love watching it. That's just
State of readiness.
Yes, a state of readiness. That's sort of it's just super, super compelling.
Yeah, we've done the show where when we're off stage, we're still on stage at some different spaces, and we work that we never disengage ourselves when we're doing that when we're on stage, even if you don't have a puppet in your hand, that you still have to be present, giving your energy to people that are on stage. So, even when you're off stage, you don't really fall into a lax mode, or that you're still invested in the story, that you keep your energy levels up, things like that.
So you have We Walk Among You under your belt. You have Circular under your belt. Can we ask if there's plans for the future of the Artichoke Heart Collective?
Actually, we do have we have a collection of shadow puppets that we just did at Centaur on Saturday morning. But anyways, we have plans to make more shows. We're kind of in conversation about what that's going to look like. We're not sure. We've had a busy year, which is fantastic. So we're kind of going back to the drawing board and seeing where we want to, what exactly we want to pursue in our new work. But we don't have any specifics yet.
Got to find more objects on the street of Toronto to inspire another show.
Yeah, Circular totally came from the objects. This show didn't quite come from the objects, but we collected clocks, and that was the primary. Then I read books on time and time theory and all sorts of things, and it built out of there. But it really started with the object of a clock. So maybe we'll find an object that will inspire us. We're not sure.
You just need another garbage strike in Toronto.
Yeah.
That was the worst. Okay.
This has been so wonderful. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We've been speaking with Andrew, Tijiki, Talia, and Alex from the production We Walk Among You by the Artichoke Heart Collective. You can check it out this week in Montreal at Mainline Theatre. All the information is at mainline.ca. You also have the info up on your own website. It's artichokeheartcollective.wordpress.com is where we can find information about you. And Facebook, just search Artichoke Heart Collective. Perfect. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks.
Thanks.
See you later. Pew, pew.
Pew pew. Puppets. Yeah.
In Montreal. Mainline Theatre. Come to Mainline and watch Artichoke Heart. Do the thing. Do the thing. Do the thing. Cacophony of sound.
Well, that was fun.
Check out the next episode of Edge of the City, also on the No More Radio Network, for another discussion about the Artichoke Heart Collective and their show We Walk Among You. Paula Flalo is going to be interviewing some of the other members of the group.
Dirty Feet was previously recorded at the Montreal Improv Theatre and is currently recorded out of Mainline Theatre. Thanks, dudes.
Dirty Feet est produit et animé par, produced and hosted by Alison Burns,
JD Papillon,
et Stéphanie Moret-Robert. You can find out more about our show at nomoreradio.com, follow us on Twitter at Dirty Feet, and find us on Facebook at Dirty Feet Podcast.
Vous pouvez écouter tous nos épisodes sur notre site web ou vous pouvez vous abonner également sur iTunes à notre podcast.
Listen to past episodes on website or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes.
While you're there, be sure to give us a rating and or leave a comment to help us spread the word.
Tune in next week for a whole new show.